The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. We will start in a few minutes. We'll wait for some more people to join and we'll get going. All right, so let's get started. Welcome, everybody, for joining this new series of our Build Your App and Ready Knowledge webinars. I'm Davide Mortillaro, Technical Support Specialist, and today we'll dive a little bit into detail for versions 2020. They've come out more or less starting from March. First release was AutoCAD 2020, and then all the other products followed. So what we are going to do is more or less an overview of what has been changed in regard to installation and licensing for the new versions. So as always, the main objective of our webinars are to give you the knowledge of what it takes to install, deploy, and manage the Autodesk products. So there, as mentioned, we always try to go a little bit into detail for issues such as installation and licensing. As always, you can ask any question with the question box in the GoToWebinar console, and we'll try to answer it. My colleague Marco is also on the line. In case you have any question, you can answer those. But we're also going to allocate some time at the end of our webinar to reply to any question you might have at the end after our presentation. And for those of you who don't know, we have launched a YouTube channel mainly focused on installation and licensing, workflows and guidelines. Those are very high level videos that us from the support team have created and polished for all our users and customers to use to troubleshoot and configure their software. So I'm gonna share this presentation after a webinar. You can advertise our channel with your customer, with your users, in case you find it useful. All right, so what's new in version 2020? Mainly, let's get it out of the window. What's changed mainly in 2020 is the licensing component. So if you remember, when we started the version 2017, we introduced a new user ID-based licensing. So the user could activate the software, not anymore just a serial number, but some licenses were purchased with the let's say user ID based. So you just need to click sign in when the software started, enter your Autodesk credential, and that was it. You didn't need to enter a serial number anymore. But that was a time when serial number were still kind of very popular, and most of the licenses came with a serial number back then, standalone license we're talking. And then 17, 18, and 19, more or less, the workflow was more or less the same. Nothing much changed behind the curtain. Now with 2020, what you're going to see is a very similar experience for the user, but what's happening in the background is rather different. So the licensing system behind changed to accommodate modern system, modern for workflow, and it's more user-friendly for when it comes to manage your license inside the product. We're going to see that in a live demo in a few minutes. So as I said, all 2020 products, or most of 2020 products, come with this new licensing system, and that gets installed right at install time, and it also gives us some debugging capabilities, which is something that in the previous system, previous versions, we didn't have. So if you remember the previous system, you had to dive into some specific directories and see what was happening, if the LGS folder was correctly set up, if there was it was pointing correctly to the right licensing system. Now this is all done by this so-called installer tool that we're going to see. Another main change with 2020 is that not all, but most of the software, most of the licenses are being migrated as we speak to the user ID based authentication. So you may have noticed that some of you that own a license, or some of your users had a serial number based license, but has been migrated to a user ID based license. So in the account, they wouldn't see the serial number anymore. They would see the small print saying sign in. And as we speak, more and more licenses are being migrated. So I expect this change, if you don't have it already, expect this change to happen soon on your account. Of course, during the change, there is no interruption. All happens in the background. And another big news is that the install now option for now is available only for 2019 and higher version. So 2017 and 2018 don't have the install now option anymore. If you notice in the Autodesk account, you can just download it with download now and browser download. Here as well, install now option has developed a lot since its introduction in version 2017, and we felt like this new experience was better used starting from version 2019. All right, so this new licensing component, how it looks like. So there are a few things to notice. Now, the new license component mainly works as service running in the background in your system. So once you install the software, you will get a new service in the Windows Service panel. It works cross-platform, so you will have this on Windows, on Mac, and Linux. So with version 2020, we have this system basically is not limited to one platform only, but on all platforms supported by our products. So we have this new service called Autodesk Desktop Licensing Service, and we have some main folders that have changed since version 2019. Now we have a main folder that is stored under Common Files. We're going to check that in a second, and another folder under Program Data. The one under Program Data, of course, is always like temporary with the storage data, but the actual main folder of the Autodesk licensing component is under Program Files x86 Common Files. And as I mentioned before, we also have this install helper, ADSK licensing install helper, and it's a command line based tool, and we can use to easily debug issues with the licensing component, and also check which license method we used, which product has been registered in that machine. It's a different system, and now we're gonna see it in a second. All right, so let's just have a look. Okay, so this is basically my machine I've prepared. So I have both version 2019 and 2020. So we're gonna compare a little bit what changed between the two versions. So if you remember with 2019, we had to dive into program data. And what the main folders were was this FlexNet folder, if you remember. We have here the storage data file that once in a while we had to remove, clear, and then launch the software in case of any licensing issue or activation issues. So we would clear this folder, launch the software again, and most of the time solve the licensing issue appearing. And back then, there was also the folder inside Autodesk called CLM. And inside CLM, we would have the folder LGS, and here you will have a bunch of folders depending on how many products you had installed, and each of those referring to the specific product. So in this case, I have AutoCAD LT 2019, so I have my folder for AutoCAD 2019 here with the same product key, and once inside, I would have the LGS data. So if you remember this LGS data, we open it with Notepad. It would say which licensing method we are using. In this case, we have _user, which means that when we start the software, our ID is getting checked against our account and then get verified and launch the software. So this was mainly what happened with 2019. So these two folders were important. So LGS with the corresponding folder and the one under FlexNet with the storage files. So what happens with 2020? So in 2020, we have mainly, so I'm already there, so I'll go a little bit back so I can show you. We have our main component stored under program files, x86, common files, Autodesk shared, and ADSK licensing. So this is all new. This is the new licensing component 2020. It's all stored in here. It's a small XC you need to launch. It's been launched when you start the installation. So these files are created at install time, and you might see that there are different versions right now. So the first one shipped with 2020 is 9.0.1.1462, and there's been a licensing hotfix released after a few weeks of launch, which introduced 9.0.3.46. So ideally, the licensing component is always using the latest version. In this case, it's 9.03. But to be sure to always go to the right version, there is a symbolic link with this folder. Current always takes us to the latest version. Inside, we have a bunch of folders. We don't really need to go inside each of these. This is really the architecture of the licensing component. There is an agent that works in the background that talks with the licensing component and the single sign-on system. There is the servers that we've mentioned that it's been launched at install time and every time we launch the software. And we have the helper, the installation helper. So this is the main we're going to see the install helper, how it works in a few seconds. But this is mainly the important thing about our licensing components. If something is missing from here, it's not going to work. We're going to get some error doing the installation and or also doing operation of our software. There's a possibility to uninstall the licensing component. Sometimes we've seen some issues with this license checkout. You might have noticed with 2020. And what we do is to basically uninstall it from here, reinstall the component manually, and then it gets restored. Another important bit, as I was saying, for 2020 is also in program data. If we go back to program data, we find the storage files. So under Autodesk, this new folder is ADSK licensing service. And this one is basically storage files for our licensing component. Mainly the .data file, it's the one that talks between the service and the agent, and the SDS file. So these two are very important for our licensing. If this gets corrupted, or if the user doesn't have access to this folder, you will get a license checkout error when you launch AutoCAD. Now this error sometimes is confusing. We're going to see in a second, because the user might think, license checkout, what happened? My license is valid. Don't worry, it's just that this folder is not being accessed properly. So perhaps you have rights, limited rights over this folder, or the user has some kind of permission issues on his Windows profile. So I was saying this file SDS is very important because it's the one that stored all the registered product we have on our system. All right, so this is the storage folder. This is very important to notice. And I'll also show you, see if I can show you the service, which is also important, more important than ever, I would say. So if you open this task manager and we open the services, so when you install the software, or you install the licensing component, in case you reinstalled it, you will get this service installed as well. So this is the Autodesk license service. If this doesn't work, if it doesn't run, you're going to get the license error. Very clear. It's very important to notice that this can be hindered or can be stopped by an antivirus. So as always, make sure your antivirus is not messing up with the service, especially in the install time. Sometimes it gets installed, it's not correctly set up to automatic, or it's stopped. You need to get in and start it yourself. All right. So this is the main architecture. What's important to bear in mind when troubleshooting licensing issues with 2020, and this works for all 2020. So AutoCAD, in this case I have AutoCAD, but could be Revit, could be Inventor, could be Vault. They're all in here. All right. So what's changed for the user? So when we started AutoCAD LT 2019, right? I have it already set up and I already accessed with my user ID. But let's say I want to change user ID. I have another user that came in the office. I assigned them another license and I'm giving my computer. So they have their own license. They want to use their own license on this computer. So what I would do with 2019 is to get inside the software, go to license management from the About window, and I would change license type from here. What happened was that I had to change the license, but to do that, I had to close the software. So I hit changed, then close the software. It would tell me if I want to save, close it, and then I had to reopen it. So what this operation did was to remember that LGS folder, that file was reset, was cleared out. Now it's getting recreated. So in this case, I would set single user, and it will run again. Right? So this is basically what happened with 2019. If we were to change it manually, because we cannot start, our software, we had to go inside that program data folder, go inside CLM, LGS, all the way down to LGS data file, open it, either clear the file or recreate a new. I mean, we most likely clear the file completely, and that LGS window will appear again. What happens to 2020 instead is a bit different, and it's quite easier. Let's see in a second. So once it's launched, same again, we go to manage license. So we change the license type. And what happens is that everything now is happening in the software. We don't need to close our work, save our drawings, and then launch again. We can do everything directly into the program. Very easy. Or even to change from single user to multi-user, it's all happening here. All right, so this is what happened inside the software. Let's see, we cannot start the software because we get, I don't know, we get a licensing error at launch time, so we cannot even get inside the software. Now, if you want to change, if you want to reset or change the license method for 2020, now this is where it gets a little bit interesting. So we go to our common files. You remember the main location where we had the licensing installed. So it's program files, common files, others shared, licensing. So all the way down to current, and we go find our helper. Inside our helper folder, we have this licensing install helper XC. Now, this doesn't have any GUI, no user interface. So what happens is that we need to use it through a command line. So we need to run a command line. Always make sure to use administrator in case we have permission issues. We throw our directory in there. So we just move there. And we need to call the install helper. And first of all, if we want to change the license, if you want to reset it, it's the command would be change -pk, the product key of our software, the version -pv 2020.0.0.f. This could be looking a little bit confusing for you if the first time you see it. Don't worry, I have everything prepared and I will share it with you with a presentation. There is a full article explaining step by step. This is just to show how it works. And then -lm. And to reset, we just give a empty flag, which is just double quotation marks. All right, that's basically done. No error message, so it means that it worked. That means that now we reset the LGS flag. It means that when we launch AutoCAD 2020, we'll be asked which license method we want. And there you go. So now we are able to launch the software. So if for whatever reason this step was skipped or was corrupted in the first place, we can reset the license and get it going. All right, so let's close this one. Oh, there you go. You see a license. This is one of the error that would appear if we wouldn't activate properly. So convenient that it appeared right now. Okay, so this is basically how to reset for 2020. It's a bit more complicated because you need to get used to use command line, but it's very straightforward once you know how it works. Another interesting thing for those a little bit more tech savvy that I want to show is to the capability that install helper has to list all the register software we have on this machine. So to do that, we need to run also another command from here in the exact same folder. So it would be also to call the install helper.exe, and this time we append the command list. We'll get an output here, and the information we'll see will be basically related to the project, the product we have registered on our machine. It's pretty complicated information, you might assume, and it's not very easily readable. What I like to do is to send it out to a text file in the same folder. And if we go back, you see that txt file was created inside our folder. I copy the whole thing, and then I go over to a website where I have my JSON viewer. So this is a JSON languaging program. What I do is to just copy it here, go to viewer, and have now a more structured way of checking this information. So as you can see, I only have AutoCAD 2020 as we've seen on my machine, and you can see the information related to AutoCAD 2020 in here. You'd see the feature ID, the product key that I used, the product key used during install time. This is given by the install wizard. The version, and if it's supported by user license, you could also see which license method has been used. Right now, no license method has been set because we've cleared out the LGS flag. But ideally, you could be able to see if the user installed it as user, as installed as a standalone serial number, as multi-user, and so on. So for each product, you would see a JSON item here. So we only have one, so there's only the 0 item. You would see 1, 2, 3 if we have more. So one important thing to remember is that you wouldn't see information related to 2019 here. So only 2020 software will be checked here. All right. Another interesting thing that I wanted to show, and then we'll go back to our presentation, is that what happens when we get a licensing error. So we saw that license checkout error. That license checkout error can appear if obviously I didn't sign in, so I will get the error. So we go back to 2020, we'll sign in, and then we'll do a little bit of trial and test it out when this error can appear. So we have a bunch of scenarios when the error can appear. I want to show you what to check when you're presented with one of those. So let's say I sign in here. Some information was already stored, so I signed in. Let's say I close this, and okay. So you remember in the program data, we had this folder, ADSK license and service. So sometimes it can happen that this file gets corrupted, right? And we need to recreate it. So if it's corrupted, most likely, let's say, I'm gonna rename it just to simulate the fact that it's corrupted. So when the software launches, it will look for that file. All right, it will let us launch. So we start drawing. There you go. So after a few seconds, more or less, we'll get this error message. So what's happening is that the service is running, but the service is basically looking for the data file, doesn't find it, and then you error out. So we need to quit, go back in here, check our data file. Is this correct? No, it's not. Of course, I renamed it, but just to give you an idea. So we rename it. If you're curious about it, another way of seeing if the service is working is to open this file, and you would see an IP address. It's basically a loopback address. That's basically our machine here. So it's a local service and a port. If you want to check if the license service is working right, we copy this IP address and this port number. We open an internet browser. We just passed it here. and you get a message whether or not it's working. So in this case, the service is running. The file is not corrupted, is working. So it's working. So if we launch AutoCAD again, it should work. All right. So that's basically that's very important to keep in mind that this file is needs to be working with the IP, and the port should give you that message in the Internet browser. Another thing, I mean, there could be instances where this is not enough, and you've checked the data file, the service is working, but you're still getting an error message when you launch the software 2020. So one thing that I found that is very important is to make sure that this folder here has the proper rights assigned for our user. So what I like to do is usually to get in here and add everyone as group or user that on that folder, and just assign full control. It's just that licensing folder. So we just set everyone, we give full control, and save it. And the same I like to do for our Autodesk share folder. In here under Program Files 86, go to Properties, Securities, and add. I can show you right away. Add everyone. If you don't feel okay just adding everyone, you can just add your user and just give him full control. Click full control and apply. So what happens here that sometimes we've seen this more with Windows 7 more than Windows 10. Sometimes you may need to give permission rights over this folder for the licensing component to run properly. Otherwise, it will give you that error, which can be annoying because sometimes customer is working, after a few minutes even, they get the error message because the service didn't have, it basically times out, doesn't find the proper permission, cannot read those files and DLLs, and it gets erupted. All right, so this is all for the live demo. I'm not sure if there are questions at this point here. Okay, I don't see any. All right. Of course, you can always, we're gonna allocate some time for some questions later. All right, so let's move on. All right, as said, these are the two most common errors. You might see an old one, an old friend of ours, license manager is not functioning. This still happens with 2020, but I would say that is, let's say, easier to troubleshoot because it's basically an install error. This is, since the beginning, has been, let's say, a masking error because AutoCAD, this is a way of AutoCAD telling us that something is wrong with the license manager. But what really is important is to see what happens before this error appears. Do you get it before you even have the chance to sign in? Do you get it before or after you sign in? So depending when you get it, it could be related to either licensing component or the installation itself. So most of the time, this one is really resolved to just reinstalling the software or reinstalling the licensing component. But the instance where it appears, it's quite they are quite lower than in the past. The error that you might have seen yourself or with your users or customers is this one above, is this license checkout timed out. And we have documented all the known troubleshooting steps right in this article. And maybe you can give a quick look. Let's see. I can show it to you guys. Okay. We have documented since the beginning the instances where this file can get corrupted and how to solve these issues. You say, like we've seen, there's perhaps the service is not running or the SDS file is not created properly. And there are some steps here that indicates how to proceed in case you want to. You need to reinstall either a licensing service or to register the product yourself. Really easy, step by step, how to work. All right, and then as we mentioned, we have all the serial number subscription, or most of them are being migrated. So you might be able, even if you still have a serial number, you might be able to just sign in and enter your Autodesk credentials, and you should be set and with your software activated. Just give it a try and see how it works. In case you get an error, just go back or you go into trial, because if it's not being migrated, you still need to use your serial number. Just go back, just resetting the LGS flag and activate with serial number. We still have this little option here. And as also like mentioned before, install now is gone for 2018 and 2017. You'll only find it on 2019 and higher version. Little preference of mine is download now. I mean, I was a great fan of browser download, but download now, the system of the whole download manager is improved a lot, and it really saves you a lot of time because the download speed is very fast. And once you've downloaded, you already have it ready to be extracted. Of course, it's not a great option in case you need to move the compressed files over to another machine. But if you're preparing a deployment, if you want to install even on that same machine, download now is the perfect option for that. It's very fast, very reliable. So kudos to our developers to really improve that experience. It's really improved a lot. And like I mentioned before, we are always populating our YouTube channel with new videos. I will give you just a quick overview. So we just go over to the main installation and licensing or configuration steps. We don't go too much into detail into troubleshooting errors, but in case you have issues to how to add updates to deployment or how to generate a license file, how to perform a download installation and all that kind of stuff, that can be, it's easy, but it may take some time for your user to follow. These videos are a great example of how to do step by step by yourself. It's just a very detailed video tutorial that we put all together, and we are constantly populating our channel. So it's all stuff that from our support team creates. So it comes from us firsthand. So we work with that, and we feel like it's very useful for a user to have this information on their hand. So there's a link in the presentation. So just feel free to like and subscribe. And all right. So with this, we have got to the bottom of our presentation. Not sure if there are any question you might have what we've covered today. We'll give you guys like a few minutes in case nothing pops in your mind. Okay, first question. Was this recorded? Yes, it was recorded, and it will be updated to our YouTube channel. So again, make sure to subscribe. You will get notified once we upload the presentation right there. And yeah, I think once it's ready, we'll upload it. We'll get notified. Okay, so another question. Iham is asking, in the Let's Get Started window, I have an issue with the customer that only multi-user appeared. Single user doesn't appear. Okay, this is an interesting one. So we get this very often. So when you don't see the sign-in option or the single user option in that Let's Get Started window, that means that something is interrupting the connection between the software and our servers. So this is already a red light that tells you that either an antivirus, proxy, or a firewall is interfering with this communication. Because what happens is that the software wants to connect to our server and see if that user can get the sign-in option. This is also appearing when you want to launch a trial and you cannot. So what I would suggest is make sure that the user doesn't have any proxy or firewall enabled. If they have one, then in that case, we are able to provide those URLs that they need to whitelist in their proxy, and then they will be able to get the sign-in button and get through for the activation. Okay, another question. Can we send end user to the YouTube channel? Yes, of course. I mean, we want to advertise as much as possible, so feel free to do so. Okay, another question from Henrik. Do you still need the Autodesk license service when you're running network license? Yes, you do, because the information is still stored locally for your network license server. So you need to check if that service is running. You may get the same error license checkout if the service is not running. So always double check that in case you have issues. Okay, another question from Ayoade. Does the new method, which doesn't need serial numbers, mean that customer must always be connected to the internet? No, there is still valid the 30 days allowance. So once you connect to the internet, you are granted those 30 days, and then you need to reconnect. You can be offline, but after 30 days, you need to reconnect so it validates. What happens is that sometimes you may get the error like license checkout just because the service is not running. So locally, the program is not talking to the service, and then you get the error message. It's not because you're not on the internet. It's just because the service is not talking with the local service. So again, just check the service like what we've seen, and you should be all set. Okay, another question. How do you switch from single license to network license? Okay, this we can easily check it again. I mean, let me go back from our, okay, let's go back to our machine. Okay, so I can give you a short demonstration. So we can either do it from within the software. We can change the license pretty easily. So I can show you both from within the software and when you cannot run it. So we're going here, license management, change license type, and then we have the multi-user option. Of course, we chose multi-user. The software will ask us for our server host name. If we want to do it from outside the software, we need to go back to our command line. You remember the command line we used to list all the registered products? We launch again, we call Autodesk licensing install helper, and right now it's single user, right? We need to change it to network. That means that we need to go and give change, give again the correspondent product key. So PK001L1, the product version, -PV 2020, 00, sorry. 00F. And then to change the license method, -LM, and we give network. So this value, if you remember, was in the LGS data for version 2017, 18, 19. The same value we can give here. So -LM network. And that's changed. Now, when we start the software, we'll be asked for the host name. And then from there, the software will call your server, pull the license, and work as normal. All right, another question came. For film studios that aren't allowed to have internet connection while in production, are there any means to validate the installed license? Okay, well, in this case, I would say, so when there are generally internet connection restrictions, this happens a lot, yeah, with the film studios or with the architectural firms that don't want to have direct access to the internet. In that case, we do not recommend having single user licenses. And the reason is quite simple. Single user license needs at least one every month, the internet connection. There is currently there is no way to override this. So in those cases, it's highly recommended to consider a multi-user license. So you might need to talk either with our client services team to have this figured out with them. Right, another question. Can we sign in manually with serial numbers? Some customers don't have access to internet in the engineering department like banks. Again, no internet, no party. Well, this is the reason why we have those URLs. If you have a restricted environment, you might want to talk with the network administrator of their organization, because those URLs are specifically for our software, and those are called only when the software needs to validate the license. We can check again. I can show you what I'm referring to. So this is what we suggest. Let's see, okay. This is what we suggest to follow when we have a proxy or firewall. We have security measures inside the organization. And this is a list of domains that call our server, are linked to our server. So when the software runs, it will basically verify the license against those servers. Now, you might see some other domains here that are not related to license verification. And this is okay, we can skip them. If you just need your organization to verify the license, they just need to add these domains. These are very important. These are all it needs for the program to verify the license. They don't need, sometimes there are organizations that say, oh, I don't want to whitelist all these in my firewall. Why do I need to do that? We say it's totally fair. So just make sure to use these domains. Those are all Autodesk domains. It talks only to us, and it will just validate our license. Okay, another question. Which ports need to be open in the firewall for a single user license? It's simple as 80 for HTTP and 443 for HTTPS. All communication happens between these two protocols. You're welcome, Daniel. I'm not sure if there are any other questions. I said, maybe I didn't mention before, there are always some gray cases, some edge cases where you may not have the answers. In that case, we're always available through the support contact page. I'm gonna make sure to put a link in that presentation I'm gonna share with you guys, and we're always available to check case by case if necessary. All right, it seems that there is no other question. Then we can call it a webinar for today. And thank you very much for attending. This is really great, and for your for participation, for the question that comes in. It's really great to get to close to our users, and make sure to be to get you will probably get notification. We'll get some more webinars coming in the next months. So there are always occasion to get in touch with us. And thank you again, and have a nice day for now.